Long before humans learned to cross the stars, there lived a race that called themselves the Valorians. They were not like any other beings in the galaxy. Their skin shone like liquid silver. Their eyes glowed with a fire that never faded. Their voices carried both music and thunder. They looked like gods, and for ages uncounted, they were treated as gods. The Valorians believed themselves to be immortal. They did not grow old. Their bodies did not weaken with time. Wounds healed. Diseases never touched them. Across the stars, other races whispered their name in fear. Kingdoms fell at their command. Armies surrendered before a single battle. Entire planets paid tribute to them. For millions of years, this was the way of the universe. The Valorians ruled. The others obeyed. But as centuries stretched into eternity, something strange began to happen. The Valorians grew restless. When nothing can kill you, when nothing can challenge you, even power feels empty. They searched for meaning in endless wars, but no enemy could stand against them. They searched for knowledge, but they had already unlocked the secrets of the stars. They searched for joy, but immortality dulled every pleasure. The great halls of their shining cities echoed with silence. They had everything, yet they felt nothing. Then one day, their long-range scanners detected something unusual. A tiny blue planet, circling a yellow sun, at the edge of a quiet arm of the galaxy. The planet's name was Earth. At first, the Valorians dismissed it. The creatures living there were short-lived, weak, and fragile. They called themselves humans. Their lives lasted only a breath compared to the endless lives of the immortals. What could such a species matter? But curiosity stirred. A small fleet was sent to observe. When the ships entered the solar system, they expected fear. They expected humans to bow as others had. They expected to see panic in the eyes of mortals. But what they found was something different. The humans looked up at the sky, saw the massive Valorian ships, and did not tremble. Instead, they prepared. Soldiers marched. Scientists studied. Leaders spoke with determination. For the first time in countless ages, the Valorians felt something they had not felt in a very long time: unease. The leader of the expedition, a being named Sarilith, stood before the Council of Immortals and spoke. These creatures are not like the others. They are not strong. They are not wise. They are not eternal. And yet, they stand tall. They face us as if they do not fear us. The council laughed. How could mortals threaten gods? But Sarilith's words echoed in their minds. Why did these fragile beings show no fear? What secret did they hold? The Valorians watched humans closely, and the more they watched, the more unsettled they became. They saw human children laugh, even though they knew one day they would die. They saw human explorers climb mountains, dive into oceans, and fly into the skies, even though their bodies could break so easily. They saw human warriors fight battles knowing they might never return. And each time a human fell, another rose to take their place. The Valorians whispered among themselves, why do they live as if death is nothing? Why do they not tremble before the end? The answer was simple, yet terrifying. Humans were not afraid of death. They had accepted it. And because they had accepted it, they lived each day with a fire that the immortals had long forgotten. For the Valorians, who had ruled the stars for millions of years, this was a dangerous truth. For if immortality gave them endless time, mortality gave humans endless courage. The more they studied humans, the more uneasy they became. Something was different here, something dangerous. Sarilith stood once more before the council. His voice was calm, but beneath it lay fear. These humans, he said, may be the only creatures who can stand against us. They do not need eternity. They only need a reason. The council still laughed, but their laughter no longer felt strong. The immortals had discovered something they did not understand, and in the shadows of their shining halls, for the first time in countless ages, the immortals began to feel fear, because deep inside they knew this truth. If immortality made them powerful, mortality might make humans unstoppable, and thus began the story, The story of gods who believed they could not fall, and the mortals who would prove them wrong. The Valorians had ruled for so long that even the stars themselves seemed younger than them. Yet now whispers of unease moved through their shining cities. The humans were different, fragile, short-lived, and yet unafraid. The council decided it was time. Curiosity demanded answers, power demanded control. They would not simply observe this new species. They would step onto Earth itself. A fleet of black-silver ships fell through the night sky. Vast and silent, they covered the stars above Earth's cities. Their engines burned with golden fire, casting shadows that stretched across oceans and mountains. Humanity looked up and saw their gods descend. At least, that was what the Valorians expected. Instead, the humans did not bow. They did not cry out. They did not kneel. They gathered in streets. They pointed their weapons at the sky. Governments spoke to their people and to each other. Satellites tracked every alien movement. For the first time in history, all of humanity stood together. The Valorians stepped onto the soil of Earth. Their silver bodies shone under the sun. Their eyes burned with fire. Their voices carried power that shook the air. A group of human leaders came forward to meet them. Soldiers surrounded the area, rifles ready, even though they knew such weapons could never pierce immortal flesh. Cameras rolled. The whole world was watching. The Valorian commander, Sarilith, raised his voice. "Humans," he declared, "we are the Valorians. We are eternal. We are your gods. From this day you will kneel before us. You will serve us as countless others have. Your world will belong to us." The ground trembled with his words. In the past, no race had ever refused. Entire civilizations had surrendered after a single speech. But this time, there was silence. Then one human stepped forward. He was not a soldier, not a king, not even a president. He was a scientist. His voice was calm, his tone steady. "You call yourselves immortal," he said, looking directly into Sarilith's burning eyes. "Then why do you fear death so much?" The words struck like a blade. The Valorians, who had lived for millions of years, did not know how to answer. They had avoided the subject for so long that it felt forbidden, even to speak of it. Humans watched silently. The scientist's question hung in the air like thunder. Sarilith tried to regain control. "Your kind is weak. Your lives are short. You know nothing of eternity." But the humans did not look away. Their faces carried no fear. Instead, there was defiance. A spark the immortals had never seen before. That night, the Valorians observed more closely. They moved unseen among humans, watching, and what they saw unsettled them further. They saw humans laugh even as they faced hardship. They saw families celebrate, even knowing their time together was short. They saw soldiers train, ready to fight, even knowing they might die tomorrow. It made no sense. For the Valorians, death was the greatest enemy. They had lived for millions of years trying to escape it, yet humans lived as though death was not an enemy at all, but simply part of life. The immortals whispered among themselves, "How can such fragile beings face us without fear? Why do they not tremble before eternity?" One Valorian suggested, "Perhaps they are fools. They do not understand what we are." But Sarilith shook his head. "No, they understand, and still, they do not bow." The council debated long into the starless night. Some argued humans must be crushed before their defiance spread. Others argued humans were too small to matter. But Sarilith's words silenced them all. "They are not strong. They are not eternal. Yet they look at us with eyes that do not break. That is more dangerous than any weapon. The Valorians could destroy planets, they could burn cities. But how could they defeat a people who did not fear them? How could they rule a species that did not fear death itself?" And so, the first seeds of conflict were sown. The humans did not know it yet, but by refusing to kneel they had challenged the gods of the stars. The Valorians returned to their ships, their silver faces unreadable, their fire-lit eyes watching Earth below. For the first time in countless ages, they felt something that chilled even their immortal bones. It was not hatred. It was not anger. It was something far more dangerous. It was doubt. Because if mortals could face them without fear, perhaps the immortals were not gods after all. And somewhere deep inside, a whisper began in the heart of every Valorian. What if these humans are the end of us? The Valorians had faced many civilizations. Some had resisted for a short time. Some had begged for mercy. All of them, in the end, had bent the knee. But humans were different. They did not kneel. They did not break. And even more strange, they asked questions. It began with that scientist's words, "If you are immortal, then why do you fear death so much?" The question spread across the council chambers like a shadow. None of the immortals had an answer. For ages they had avoided such thoughts. They had hidden the truth even from themselves. The Valorians were immortal, but only in body, not in spirit, not in courage. When humans looked at them, they saw not gods, but prisoners chained to eternity. The observers. After the first meeting, the Valorians disguised themselves and walked among humans. They wanted to understand this strange, short-lived race. What they saw disturbed them even more. In one city, they saw a fire break out in a tall building. Humans rushed inside, not to save themselves, but to save strangers. Men and women with no hope of survival still climbed the stairs, carrying others on their shoulders. Some never came back. The Valorians whispered in shock. Why would they throw away their lives so easily? But another answered quietly, perhaps it is not waste. Perhaps it is something else. In another place, they saw children playing in the streets, laughing, running, falling, and rising again. They knew they would grow old. They knew they would die. And yet their laughter filled the air, stronger than the silence of Valorian halls. One immortal asked aloud, "Do they laugh because they forget death?" A human who overheard replied, "No. We laugh because life is short. That is why every moment matters." The words struck the alien deeper than any weapon. The questioners. When the Valorians revealed themselves again, humans did not attack. Instead, they spoke. They questioned. They challenged. A young soldier asked, "If you live forever, then what drives you to fight? Why rise in the morning? Why build anything if nothing can end?" An old woman said, "Your bodies do not die, but your hearts already have. What good is eternity without meaning?" A human child even asked, "If you cannot die, can you truly live?" The Valorians had no answers. Every question tore away a piece of their pride. Every word revealed a truth they had hidden for eons. Immortality had not freed them. It had chained them, the mirror of mortality. The more the Valorians listened, the more they began to feel a cold realization. Humans were not afraid of death because they had lived with it since the beginning of their history. They had built their lives around it, found strength through it, and created stories, songs, and dreams because they knew their time was short. Death gave humans meaning. Immortality had stolen it from the Valorians. The immortals began to remember things they had long forgotten. The thrill of risk, the sweetness of laughter, the fire of sacrifice, things that could only exist when time was limited. The uneasy council back in their grand chambers, the council of Valorians argued. Some were furious. These humans insult us with their words, crush them before they spread their poison. Others were curious. No, we must learn. There is something in them we lost long ago, something dangerous, something powerful. Saralith stood silent as the voices clashed. His burning eyes stared into the endless void beyond the chamber's glass walls. Finally, he spoke. "We believed we were eternal, but these mortals show us a truth we cannot ignore. They live as if every breath is precious, and we who have endless breaths find no value in any of them." The chamber grew quiet. For the first time, the Valorians admitted fear not of death, but of emptiness. The humans' secret among humans, stories began to spread as well. Ordinary people spoke of the silver-skinned gods who could not die, yet seemed so hollow. Some feared them. Others mocked them. But many simply pitied them. One human leader spoke words that reached even the ears of the immortals. We may live short lives, but our hearts burn brighter than their endless years. We may fall, but in falling, we rise stronger. That is what makes us human. The words carried across the stars. The Valorians heard them, and for the first time in countless ages, they felt envy. They envied mortals. The quiet before the storm. The Valorians had expected easy conquest. Instead, they found a mirror that showed them their greatest weakness. Humans did not tremble before them. Humans questioned them. Humans reminded them of the one truth they had buried for millions of years. Immortality was not strength. It was a cage, and those fragile mortals who lived and died in the blink of an eye might hold the key to breaking it. The council ended with a final warning from Sarilith. Do not underestimate them. These humans, they are not like the others. If we ignore their strength, we may one day fall to it. But even as he spoke, war drums echoed faintly in the distance, because curiosity had revealed something dangerous. And soon, curiosity would turn to conflict. The Valorians had faced questions that unsettled even their immortal minds. Humans had shown them a truth they could no longer ignore. Immortality was not strength, but emptiness. Yet the council still clung to pride. They are weak, some said. They are small, fragile things. Let us crush them and be done with it. But Sarilith, commander of the First Fleet, raised his hand. His silver skin reflected the light of the council chamber. His fire-lit eyes burned with unease. No, he said. We must be cautious. I have seen their courage. I have seen their defiance. And I have seen their power. It is not in their weapons. It is not in their strength. It is in something else. The council laughed, but the sound was nervous. Deep inside, each immortal feared that Sarilith was right. The battlefield of the mind, the Valorians continued their observations. From orbit, their ships watched the humans with cold, unblinking eyes. They saw soldiers training in harsh conditions, pushing their bodies until they broke, then standing again. They saw doctors working day and night to save lives, even as their own health failed. They saw parents starving themselves so their children could eat. Everywhere they looked, humans endured. One Valorian whispered, "Why do they fight so hard when their lives are so short?" Another answered, "Because their lives are short. Every breath matters. Every choice matters." The Valorians began to feel something strange. It was not fear. It was not anger. It was recognition. They saw in humans what they had once been, long before immortality stole their purpose. The experiment to test humanity, the Valorians created a cruel experiment. They landed on a remote human colony far from Earth. They told the humans there, "Kneel and we will let you live, resist and you will die." The humans did not kneel. They fought with outdated weapons, broken machines, and desperate courage. They knew they could not win. Yet still, they fought. The Valorians crushed them with ease, but when the battle ended, they were shaken. For every human that fell, another had risen. For every loss, the survivors grew fiercer. Even in death, they seemed to grow stronger. Sarilith stood over the battlefield, silver hands stained with human blood. He looked upon the fallen and felt something cold in his immortal heart. "These mortals," he whispered. "They fight as if death is nothing. They do not fear the end. They embrace it. That is their strength." The hidden weakness revealed. The Valorians gathered in council again. One immortal pounded his fist upon the shining table. "They are fools. They waste their lives for nothing." But Sarilith answered, "No, it is not nothing. It is everything. Do you not see? We feared death so much that we chained ourselves to eternity. But they who face death each day are free. They have something we cannot understand, something we cannot defeat." "What is it?" another asked. "Purpose," Sarilith said. Extraterrestrial. Word fell heavy on the chamber. Immortality had stolen purpose from the Valorians. They had all the time in the universe, so nothing mattered. But humans with only a short spark of life gave meaning to every breath, every choice, every dream, and that meaning made them dangerous. The first signs of fear. The Valorians began to hesitate. No enemy had ever made them question themselves. No army had ever forced them to pause, but humanity was different. They had weapons, yes, but their true weapon was invisible. It was the will to fight even when defeat was certain. It was the power to rise even after falling. It was the courage to stare immortals in the eyes and say, "You may kill us, but you will never own us." That was the weakness the Valorians had discovered, not in humans but in themselves. They were unprepared for an enemy that could not be broken by fear. A human's words one night, Sarilith walked unseen through a human city. He heard two humans speaking in a small cafe. One asked, "Do you think they can kill us all?" The other smiled sadly. "Maybe, but even if they do, we'll fight. And that fight will mean something. Our lives are short, but our choices are forever." Sarilith froze. His immortal mind, older than mountains, could not escape those words. Our lives are short, but our choices are forever. The thought haunted him. For the first time, he envied mortals. The coming storm back aboard his ship, Sarilith stood before the stars. His council waited for his command. "Do we attack?" one asked. Sarilith's fire-lit eyes narrowed. "No, not yet. To fight them now is to invite something worse than defeat. We must understand them. We must learn their secret. Only then can we hope to survive," the council murmured with unease. For the first time in a million years, the immortals were afraid. Not of weapons, not of armies, but of fragile beings whose lives burned like fire. The Valorians had discovered humanity's hidden strength, and with it, their own hidden weakness. The storm of war was coming, and this time the immortals were not sure they could win. For ages beyond counting, the Valorians had never known defeat. Entire empires had crumbled before them. Armies larger than mountains had surrendered without a single shot. To lose was something the immortals could not imagine. Until humanity. The invasion at last, the council grew tired of waiting. Some immortals demanded conquest. Others demanded fear. "If these mortals will not kneel, then let them burn," they said. And so the Valorians unleashed their power. Silver warships, vast as continents, darkened Earth's skies. Cities trembled under the shadow of their engines. Lightning cannons split the air. Their armies marched, silver and shining, their fire-lit eyes promising only doom. The immortals expected terror. They expected surrender, but they found resistance. Humanity stands. Human fleets rose to meet them. Fragile ships, old technology, nothing compared to the brilliance of Valorian craft. Yet the humans fought anyway. Their missiles streaked through the dark. Their ships dove and weaved, even as many were torn apart. On the ground, soldiers dug in. Tanks rolled across ruined streets. Civilians carried supplies, built shelters, and even joined the fight. Everywhere humanity refused to bow. A single battle would decide the fate of one continent. The Valorians unleashed their full fury, their lightning cannons tearing apart cities in brilliant flashes of golden fire. Yet the humans did not break. When one line of defense was destroyed, another rose. When one commander fell, another took his place. When soldiers were surrounded, they fought until the last bullet, and then with their bare hands. The immortals could not believe what they were seeing. The turning point at the height of the battle, Sarilith himself descended. His silver body gleamed, his fiery eyes burning as he cut through human soldiers with ease. Blades shattered against his skin. Bullets bounced harmlessly away. But then he saw something strange. A human soldier, gravely wounded, refused to fall. Back. With shaking hands, blood pouring from his wounds, he lifted a weapon and fired at Sarilith. The shot barely scratched the immortal's armor. Yet the soldier did not stop. He fired again, and again, until finally his body gave out. Sarilith stared at the fallen human. Why had he fought knowing he could not win? Why had he stood, knowing death was certain? And then something happened that had never happened before. The humans turned the battle. The first defeat, a group of human pilots flying outdated fighters sacrificed themselves. They dove into the heart of the Valorian fleet, crashing their ships into the engines of a massive war cruiser. The explosion tore the giant vessel apart, sending fire raining down across the battlefield. The Immortals were stunned. One of their great ships destroyed, not by superior weapons, not by immortal strength, but by mortals who had given their lives freely. Fear rippled through the Valorian ranks. The humans pressed harder. Every death seemed to give them more courage. Every loss seemed to sharpen their will. The Immortals fought with all their strength. But for the first time in countless ages, they felt something they had never felt before. They were losing. The retreat at last. Sarilith gave the command no Valorian had ever spoken. Fall back. The Immortals retreated, their shining ships fleeing into the black sky. Below, humanity roared in victory. The people of Earth had faced gods and forced them to retreat. The battle was over. Humanity had stood, and Immortals had fallen. The council's rage. When the Valorians returned to their grand halls, silence filled the chamber. Immortals who had never known fear now looked at one another with uncertainty. How is this possible? One demanded. They are weak. They are fragile. But Sarilith answered quietly. They are mortal, and that is their strength. The council erupted in anger. Some demanded the humans be erased completely. Others urged caution, but none could. Ignore the truth. For the first time in history, the Immortals had been defeated. The human spirit across Earth, the victory became legend. Songs were sung, stories were told. Children grew up knowing that humanity had faced deathless gods and stood unbroken. But more than victory, it was the spirit of the fight that mattered. Humans had proven to themselves, and to the galaxy, that courage, sacrifice, and unity could break even the strongest of chains. The Immortals' fear in the silence of his chambers, Sarilith stared at the stars. He thought of the soldier who had fought until his last breath. He thought of the pilots who had given their lives to destroy the cruiser. He thought of the words he had once heard. Our lives are short, but our choices are forever. And for the first time, Sarilith admitted the truth to himself. The Immortals had feared death for millions of years, but humans had made death their ally. That was the secret. That was the danger. And Sarilith knew. This first defeat was only the beginning. Real war was yet to come. The first defeat of the Valorians shook the galaxy. For millions of years, the Immortals had been untouchable. Their ships had crossed stars without challenge. Their armies had crushed all resistance. Yet now mortals, fragile, short-lived humans, had done the impossible. Whispers spread from world to world. If humans could fight the Immortals, maybe others could too. The legend of Earth grew like fire in the dark. But the Valorians were not done. They were angry. They were afraid. And they were ready for war. The Valorian fury, the Council of Immortals, gathered in their shining halls. Some demanded Earth's total destruction. Others begged to study humans further. But pride burned hotter than reason. We are gods, one shouted. We cannot allow mortals to shame us. And so they declared it. A full-scale war. Not a single fleet, not a single battle, but a storm across the stars. They would erase humanity and show the galaxy that the Immortals still ruled. There, fleets rose like silver storms. Tens of thousands of warships left their docks. Armies of fire-eyed soldiers filled the void. Their weapons blazed with golden light, enough to shatter worlds. The Great War had begun. Humanity unites on Earth. There was no time for celebration. Humanity knew the first victory was only the beginning. The Immortals would return, stronger than ever. Nations that once fought each other now stood side by side. Factories worked day and night, building ships and weapons. Scientists raced to unlock new technologies. Soldiers trained harder than ever. But more than machines, it was spirit that united them. For the first time in history, all of humanity fought as one. A single message was broadcast across every screen, every radio, every channel. We are mortal, but we will not bow. We will fight until the last breath. Fire across the stars. The war spread beyond Earth. Battles raged on moons, space stations, and distant colonies. The Valorians struck with fury. Their ships cut through human fleets. Their armies stormed planets, their silver bodies shining, their eyes burning with eternal fire. Yet every time they won a battle, they paid a price. For every city they destroyed, humans made them bleed. For every ship they crushed, another human fleet rose. Humans fought with desperation, with sacrifice, with fire in their hearts. They did not fear death. They used it as a weapon. When one pilot fell, another took their place. When a base was destroyed, survivors regrouped and struck back. Every death fueled more courage. Every loss created more strength. The Immortals had never faced an enemy like this. The Immortals' doubt on the battlefield. Sarilith watched as human soldiers charged into impossible odds. They knew they would not survive, yet they fought with smiles on their faces, determination in their eyes. "Why?" whispered one Valorian soldier beside him. "Why do they fight like this? They know they cannot live." Sarilith's fiery eyes narrowed. "They fight because they cannot live forever. Every moment matters. That is what makes them stronger than us." The words spread among the Immortals like poison. Doubt crept into their hearts. Could it be true? Could mortals be stronger than gods? The human flame. The galaxy watched in awe. Stories spread of human bravery, of a fleet commander who led his ships into battle, even as his vessel burned, refusing to retreat until his last breath. Of a medic who saved hundreds on a battlefield before finally falling herself. Of children who carried messages across ruined cities, running through fire and gunshots to keep hope alive. Each story lit the flame brighter. Each sacrifice turned humans into legends. The Immortals began to realize a terrifying truth. They could destroy humans, yes, but they could never truly defeat them. The war turns. Then came the battle that changed everything. On the edge of the galaxy near a burning red star, a massive human fleet met a Valorian armada. Outnumbered, outgunned, the humans still attacked. For hours, fire filled the void. Ships shattered, engines exploded. Thousands died on both sides. And then, humans used a new weapon. A desperate creation born from sacrifice. They overloaded their own ships, turning them into living bombs, crashing into Valorian warships and taking them down in bursts of fire. The Immortals were horrified. Why would they destroy themselves, they cried. But Sarilith knew the answer. Because to them, death is not the end. It is the price of victory. The Valorians lost half their fleet that day, and for the second time in history they tasted defeat. The spreading fear. The war dragged on. Every time the Immortals thought they had crushed humanity, the mortals rose again. Every time they declared victory, another human strike tore it away. Whispers grew louder in the Valorian halls. What if we cannot win? What if they are stronger than us? And Sarilith, standing alone beneath the stars, finally admitted the truth. This is not a war of weapons, it is a war of spirit. And in spirit they are stronger. The dawn of change, the Great War, had begun as a fight for survival, but now it was more. It was proof. Proof that humanity was not weak. Proof that immortals could fall. Proof that mortality was not a curse, but a gift. Across the galaxy, other races watched closely. If humans could stand against gods, perhaps, they could too. The fire was spreading. The Immortals had started a war to remind the galaxy of their power. But all they had done was show the galaxy their fear, and as the stars burned with battles, one truth became clear. The Immortals were not eternal, but the human spirit was. The Great War burned across the stars. For years, silver fleets and human armadas clashed in endless battles. Worlds fell, stations burned, and the galaxy trembled under the weight of two unstoppable forces: immortality against mortality, eternity against fleeting life. And then at last, the war reached its end. The breaking point. The Valorians had lost, more than ships and soldiers. They had lost something far greater, their certainty. Once they believed they were eternal, untouchable, but now doubt spread through their immortal hearts like cracks in glass. Each defeat left them shaken. Each battle showed them more of humanity's secret weapon, their spirit. The immortals began to whisper to one another in fear. What if they cannot be defeated? What if these mortals are stronger than us? For the first time in millions of years, the gods of the stars no longer felt like gods. Humanity's last stand. The final battle began on the edge of a dying sun. The Valorians gathered their greatest fleet, thousands of silver warships glowing with golden fire. Their weapons were powerful enough to tear a planet apart. Humanity answered with everything they had. Earth's skies emptied. Every ship, every soldier, every pilot, every volunteer who could still fight joined the fleet. Their ships were smaller, weaker, fewer, yet their voices filled the comms with one message: we are mortal, but we will not bow. The battle that followed shook the heavens, fire in the void. The Valorians struck first. Golden beams split the void, ripping human ships apart. Explosions lit the darkness. Entire wings of fighters vanished in seconds, but humanity struck back with fury. Missiles flew, guns thundered, pilots sacrificed themselves to tear holes in the immortal fleet. For every ship that fell, another pushed forward. The battle raged for hours. Neither side would yield. Then, humanity unleashed their final weapon. The mortal gambit group of human ships broke away from the main fleet. They were old, damaged, barely holding together. They carried no escape pods, no survivors. They dove straight into the heart of the Valorian flagship, a vessel so vast it blotted out the stars. The immortals laughed at first. Fools, their weapons cannot harm us. But then the humans triggered their engines. One by one, the ships overloaded, turning themselves into burning suns. The explosions ripped through the flagship's core, tearing its heart apart in a blinding wave of fire. When the light faded, the great flagship of the immortals was gone. The galaxy fell silent. For the first time in all of history, the unbreakable had been broken. The immortals' fall, the destruction of their flagship, shattered the Valorians. Their fleets broke. Their armies faltered. One by one, their warships fell to human fire. The immortals had always believed they could not die. But on that day, thousands of them perished in the flames. And as the survivors fled into the dark, they carried with them a truth they could no longer deny. They were never gods. They were never eternal. They were only beings who feared death so much that they had chained themselves to emptiness. And it was humans, fragile, mortal humans, who proved it. The revelation: when the war ended, the galaxy did not cheer for the Valorians. Their name, once spoken with fear, was now spoken with pity. The races of the stars looked to Earth, they looked to humanity, and they saw something greater than immortality. They saw courage, they saw unity, they saw the fire of mortals who refused to bow. A single truth spread across every world, every star, every corner of the galaxy. Immortals fell, but humans endured. The council's end, the last council of the Valorians, met in silence. Their halls, once filled with light, now felt cold and hollow. We ruled for millions of years, one whispered, and in the end mortals destroyed us. Serelith, scarred from the war, spoke the words none wished to hear. They did not destroy us. They revealed us. We were never immortal. We only believed we were. But humanity has something far greater than eternity. They have meaning. No one argued. No one laughed. The truth was too heavy to deny. The human legacy on Earth, the victory became legend. Songs were sung of the Great War. Stories told of brave pilots, soldiers, and ordinary people who had fought gods and won. But more than a legend, it became a lesson. Humanity had shown that death was not the enemy. Death was the reason life mattered. And because of that, no race in the galaxy ever underestimated humanity again. The final words years. Later, a human historian wrote these words that echoed across the stars. They were called immortal, yet they feared death. We were called fragile, yet we embraced it. And in the end, it was not eternity that triumphed, it was mortality. For the fire that burns briefly burns brightest, and even gods cannot stand against it. And so the story ended. The Valorians were remembered not as gods, but as the race that fell. And humanity was remembered as the race that rose.